Раз, раз, раз. Меня слышно?
Once. Can you hear me? Great.
Спасибо всем.
Thank you all who survived.
У нас
This session is considered to be closed. Well, it's not closed in the sense that we're closing the doors and windows, but we just wouldn't like what's being discussed here to come out on press pages. So if any journalists are still in the room, please leave the room if you consider yourself to be an honest person. And please don't spread the news. So we're here to discuss the opinions. I see some people from marketing and PR, and it's them whom I'm addressing. They're all nodding their heads, so perhaps they agree. So the idea of this session
первое, которое во мне зрело, когда
is about the thoughts that I was toying with when we were preparing the PhD agenda. We're talking about tectonic shifts, but mostly in the sense that it affects the regulators, the service providers, but we don't discuss a lot how it looks from the customer viewpoint. What's happening, how in their eyes the information security concepts get changed. So this is what I'd like to start with. So we here have panelists from companies that deal with customers directly, and so because they are working with them face-to-face, talking one-on-one with number ones and number twos of the companies. So let me introduce my co-authors, let me put it this way. Roman Chapligin from Positive Technologies.
Denis
Andrievsky, an expert, put it this way. A person with a rich biography, let's put it this way. Dmitry Agado-Tinkov.
Pavel
Volchkov from Jet Infosystems. So what I would like to align about is our joint understanding and opinion about what's happening. So the words tectonic shift that we heard in the first keynote discussion perhaps do not reflect the current situation. For everyone, it looks different. For you, security people, Franks, how does the current picture look? What do you think is happening in the country? How bad it is, how dangerous it is, in your understanding, based on your experience, both in your companies and in market experience? Well, any order will do. I understand you're laughing. I'm already waiting for customers who would say what's happening on their side. Let me start. Look, my story is very simple and very vivid. If in the past, all of us as industry experts were saying, we as a vendor, when we're selling our product, so the guys were saying this to their top managers when they were building information security. Look, there's cybersecurity, there are hackers, there are attackers, and it all may lead to inadmissible implications. So you need to build protection. And the answer was, what is inadmissible? These things don't exist. Look in the media, it's all quiet, nobody's being attacked. Our colleagues are not being attacked. So I think, so if we take a high-level view, not even delving inside, so what's changed that no such questions are being asked anymore. So what, us not being attacked, other people not being attacked, if cybersecurity are not a must. So this thing has passed. About attacks, let other people talk, because it's there's a lot of curious things beneath this top level. Denis, may I ask you, how does it look from fintech and banking community? In my understanding, what I see, the number of attacks has grown many times over. So there's some incredible amount of, smoke, black noise, white noise. I think the financially motivated hackers are still financially motivated hackers. Those who wanted to earn some dough are still there. They did not change. They did not refocus on espionage. But in addition to this, we got a huge mass of low and medium-skilled hackers, maybe kids, of different level of training, not very high level. who organize DDoS attacks, of whom there are 20 times more than in the past. And if you take a look at most DDoS attacks, they're quite simple in their structure. They are not really implemented very smartly. And so you can't see anything new and novel there. What kind of changes that could happen in terms of the government groups that could attack government organizations? It's difficult for me to say. But SOPCA, I saw a publication, and they said that they named the level of attack on the Russian companies and organizations critical. What does it lead to? Of course, companies who did not do security at all, of course, they suffered from these kids and from this low and medium skilled level. But those who did information security, financial organizations, they had these attacks and had these attacks. What's become worse? TI and security tools is going away. The international community is disconnecting from the Russian Federation. This imposes a negative trail on the developing of information security, on its development vector, on the scale level of what we're doing, on the trends that exist in information security. We're losing some of threat intelligence. It's also bad. We may not be able to see some threats that may already be happening all over the world. And it's not good. It should be countered. So considering that protectiveness goes down, the attacks go up, my personal opinion is that information security, in addition to what it has been doing so far, should revise its approaches to the organization of security. If overlaying security tools for some organizations were okay, but saying overlaying, I mean when the information security was not talking a lot with business, was not going deeply into how business was structured. It was just, you just install several anti-AV solutions and nothing more than that. So perhaps it's no longer the time for that. If business comes to me saying that I have a process to work with personal data, so the security person, instead of saying that I have Federal Law 152 and Order 1119 of FSTEC, I think 119 is the number of that order. So he should look back and ask business, can you avoid processing data at all? Because if they can avoid the process, that process could be called security by design. Of course, it's a simplistic example, but on the whole, I think information security should restructure, regroup in this direction to do it security by design. And I mean, everybody knows that zero trust, security by design, security in depth with all the different borders of, if the organization had a firewall at the perimeter and nothing else, then perhaps this organization is not doing well with. But if the organization has been doing security in depth, including all the different security components for different business processes, then on the whole, they should be okay. Okay, if they break one of the 10 elements, it's not good, but not too bad. At least they can maneuver. So security in depth, if the company and the information security people were following these principles, then they shouldn't get anything outrageous. So perhaps this could happen later on, unless they become more serious. So we have this intelligence, incentives to regroup, meaning that the market need is there, and I hope that new companies will rise on that, and the existing companies will strengthen based on that. There are enough of brains in Russia. I'll come back a little bit to what Roman said in the beginning, in the effect that now the management is no longer able to not notice what's happening in the world of information security. Well, I might say that they shouldn't have done that in the past, because there were quite a lot of public cases. But now, as we're talking with customers, we indeed see that this story has received an additional push, generating a lot of interest. And at the same time, I observe a parallel trend that the number of questions that has become of interest to the management has grown as well. So information security is not the only one. On the one hand, there is interest, but on the other hand, the window of opportunity for you to bring your ideas has shrunk. So, if your business is crashing, if your logistic chains go down, maybe information security is not something that you would be prepared to spend all of your time as the CEO. So this also has to be borne in mind. And coming back to the question of how are we to work with customers, I feel that from the point of view of us as professionals working with customers, we see an idea coming on the forefront that we should take more responsibility. The information security, the usual way is when we don't guarantee anymore. And we can't calculate how much we're going to lose. So I think we should cover these two questions now. Provide more guarantees to customers and make the information security simpler for business. That's an answer to your question. Hey guys, I would perhaps like to argue with Dmitry. I started with the top management. But look, the first point you made, foreign vendors have left. On the one hand, it's not pleasant. But look, what was the position? If you are a good state enterprise, so please invest money and return it into the economy of the country, but not take it out of the country by paying foreign vendors. If you're a commercial company, well, it's up to you. This thing has always existed in the Russian market, and it's always been on the balance. They left, and it's not good, because indeed some advanced technologies are no longer available to us. We lost some easy-to-use technologies. But what has happened to counterbalance it? See, security people were wanting to cover the infrastructure. I mean, it's okay within your organization, but there were a lot of companies that didn't have either administrative or financial resource to build security covering all the perimeter, all the key systems. And for them, it doesn't matter whether these products would be foreign-made or domestically engineered. Yes, they started, but now they started where they need to build something to protect. So on the whole, well, it happened through pain. Of course, it's bad. But the effect is there. On the technology level, and on the technology level, I think it's more positive. And you get into critical infrastructure, then as a matter of principle, even for myself as a person with experience in the international market, I've always voted for best practices, wherever they come from. So my philosophy is such that for certain industries, for certain technology components, it would be wiser to use domestically developed solutions, even at not talking about them being not so user-friendly. Well, colleagues, I listened to you, and I was surprised by one thing, a gap in the perception. You both said that the news background and what's happening is indeed exerting pressure on company leaders. They're reading news that something is happening in cybersecurity, and on this wave, security people get an opportunity to have something installed in their organization. And here I think that if a security person is going to use this wave, well, meaning to say, I also exploit this wave, and it must be exploited. But if they had not had dialogue with the top managers before that, this wave will go away. That's important, yes. So the first failure, and they say, okay, good, go away. I agree what to do, that this dynamic shouldn't go away. Well, I don't know. I mean, everybody can hear what they want. But what's the difference? You're saying the top managers have seen information in the news. No, they have found themselves in the room where they had to make decisions regarding cyber security, saving their business. As to the news, yes, they started to read something more. But what's radically changes? Crisis committees and business continuity committees rarely intervenes in cyber security. But in these past few months, several companies have gone through the story of creating crisis committees. But I still believe that the situation is very bad. Had the dialogue not been in place before that, it's not good. So what you have to do is to build a regular dialogue with top management so that they could have an opportunity to make decisions on information security. So you need to be able to speak to them in the right language, using the right language. So had it not been there before that, this is a good opportunity to start this dialogue. Well, we have a stop word called decree. A lot has been said about it today, yesterday. We heard it in the keynote session from the Ministry of Digital Development. It's perceived not so much as a carrot, but rather as a stick. And we are interested in how companies are going to feel its brunt. You know, compliance is quite a bad story. It doesn't sell well with customers. It has its clear restriction, clear limit, connected to what we need to do as a minimum so that the regulator should not make problems for us in the future. What Dmitry has said is a very important story because it defines who is the decision-making person for the ways of development of information security in this organization. It's easy for Dmitry to talk because he's vice president and he's in contact with number one, and he can wage direct dialogue with a CEO, which in Russian means that he can get what he needs. If you are linked to physical security or other types of security, you'll be proxied by a person whose life experience is not relevant. And as a rule, your concerns will never get to number one because the top manager, they usually have a legal education and they make decisions that they will decide based on their experience. So there's a gap between the cyber risk of the organization and the subject matter that's typical of information security. Also, what I'd like to say, that we suddenly got new opportunities, a window of opportunities. But it looks that currently, in the moment, we have found ourselves with a lot of contexts where a lot of information security tools that were chosen as best in the market or best in terms of performance suddenly turned into pumpkin, and basically you started getting information about events, lost the opportunity to analyze them. There's a whole class of systems that don't really exist in the Russian market. And if you, allocate a budget and allocate resources, there will be several months of gap for you to start getting this information. So digital sovereignty has not yet happened, however much we were discussing about it at neither level, not at the level of CPU, of operating system. So nobody has taken away the problem with the undocumented capabilities. And when they get statistic, it's mostly about web, DDoS, phishing. But as a rule, this is just a background for more serious attacks. This takes the time of the security resources, but against this background, serious scenario-based attacks are waged with novel attack vectors. So I have a feeling. It's just like at the moment where a parachutist jumps from the airplane. I have a feeling that in the very near future we can run into serious problems which just haven't yet arrived. Look, certain things could happen. So invisible attacks that sooner or later, yes, because they don't necessarily have immediate impact. It all depends on their goal. You know, as a moderator, I'll try to move closer to you. And you know what's cool? Usually, when you're entering a discussion anywhere, you're sitting and think about NDAs, what you can speak about, what's not. Now it's become so simple. Well, I heard from you, Roman, that everybody started thinking what to do and start doing. Well, I agree with thinking, but not about doing. So mass media were DDoSed for a week or so. Mass media were not doing anything, then it did something. Okay, 3 weeks passed, and airlines started to be DDoSed, and for some reason successfully. So meaning it looks like airlines were watching mass media being DDoSed, and why should they come to us? And now they say, oh, what do we do? We're selling ticket. That's perhaps what happened to us. So you know the story is like that some triggers have worked in people's heads is only relevant for 10 to 15% of customers. So the national idea of a Russian, as the saying says, is until the thunderbolt strikes, the peasant won't put a cross against his head. So we have started to attack us. And we need to do DDoS, SOC, run a pen test in a day. Okay, a day is too short. Let's do it in 3 days. Okay, an important point. I didn't say in which sequence they started to do it. Yes, ideally it looks like this, but in real life it all happens just like you said. The problem is that the coverage is now complete. So everybody, all industries are under attack, and very different companies, from small to large. So my point was not so much about the reason why they have paid attention, but about the result. So the understanding that sooner or later it will reach you as well. So you need to do security. Yes, in fact, you're saying that it started happening. But I remember about 5 years ago, you know, in the past, when we had this APT wave, I was visiting different banks and was responding to incidents. And like 24 hours of responding, that was the first time I understood I was getting old. I went to sleep at the computer. So we cleaned the system, drove the hackers away, stopped the incidents, the acute phase of the incident. We were going to leave, and then I'd be called by a head of this organization and said, Dmitry, can you stay a bit until everything is fixed so that it shouldn't get there once again? First, I wanted to swear, and then gradually, I exhaled and said, you need at least 3 or 4 years to work intensively to remove this, to remove the reasons that could lead to this. And indeed, the guy didn't have understanding. Number one, don't have the understanding that security cannot be switched by a button. And quite often, they really have expectations. Okay, why don't you spend another day or two, but make it secure? Okay, may I? Look, I would focus your point when you're saying that until the thunderbolt strikes, a peasant will not put a cross on his forehead. You shouldn't misguide your customers or everyone. Says indeed, the market has people who has done security, those who haven't done security, and those who haven't done it now may start doing that. And here we have to deal with the subjective vision of a person working in the security organization vis-a-vis the manager, the top manager. It all depends on their character. It all depends on their relationship. If in some industry, doesn't matter which one, DDoS attacks are happening, and in the adjacent industry, you could think that it wouldn't happen to them. So if people don't expect these things to happen, well, perhaps it's not going to change until something really critical happens, or until some revolution happens. Because, everybody knows that virus is needed on working computers. Not everyone. Okay, practically everyone. Everybody heard about that? Well, I wouldn't agree. I think statistically, most people understand that even my home computer needs an antivirus. So perhaps some more progressive approaches will evolutionarily reach that, but that will happen. Well, I think the AV story is actually a different story. It's actually a story about Kaspersky. They spoke so much about themselves that people started to think it's not because you need to be secured, but you can't do without these guys. So actually, it was part of brand building from Kaspersky. And basically, something like that can be reproduced in other areas. Colleagues, let's continue. I am imposing it my own psychology. I discussed with someone, and the feelings I've had over the past 2 or 3 years is that either I'm in Inception or in Matrix movies. So a week starts and ends, and you think that it can't get worse. And then there's a knock on the door. Life brings new surprises in different aspects. Somebody, well, did you expect the pandemic in 2020? Did anybody expect what happened on the 24th of February? I've already mentioned this joke in the keynote session. Almost every day, or about every day, I get a call like that. Hey, guys, strengthen security. Why? There's information that tomorrow an unprecedented attack will happen across the entire territory of Russia. And where did you get this information? From secret hacker Telegram channels. These secret Telegram channels, I think, are now being read by all managers, whether they subscribe to them or not, but they're there. And then we see anonymouses who will say that by the end of this week, all ATMs will become empty. There's a cybersec channel that makes very strong statements. By the end of this week, the nuclear industry of Russia will stall. We've got access to the entire energy system, and Far East will be blacked out. And you get upset. You get, and then it doesn't happen. So my personal feeling is that the audience is becoming to get tired, and they stop believing that security breaches may become critical for their organizations. How does it look from your side, from your perspective, yourself talking to your managers, your top managers, your customers? Do they believe in information security? The important thing is not to try to deliver this information to the top ones. Well, we don't. They read themselves. Well, if they read something, I'll let them come to an expert and ask. If they ask me, they do ask me periodically. I'm not going to give any names. Yesterday, I was asked, Dmitry, can you... Well, there's data from Yandex, Yeda. I looked, there's my data there. So delete it, please. So... I said I can't do that. I'm explaining that basically they're out in the wild. But I explained then that it's basically a hype. Do you understand that your data, not in the same volume, but what you just see, but many times over, are spread across the internet? I can find it for you. You'll be surprised how many exciting things can be found about you: where you park your car, how you move, what you eat, who you meet, and so on and so forth. And these breaking points, why does it happen? It's because of this hype. The people need to be explained. All this has been in existence and it still exists. It's just that the information background has changed. In the past, we had a focus on leakages from banks. Maybe half a year or maybe a whole year, all the news media were talking about that. Now they switched to hacker attack, all these anonymouses. But I think that adequate people would hardly respond to that. They don't read Telegram channels.
Так, есть альтернативные.
Okay, there's an alternative point of view.
Бизнес-руководители попадают.
Do all business managers get under the influence of this news background? Well, it usually happens that the manager sends you an article and asks you to comment. If it's a Sberbank manager, then they ask details. I would like to say something in Roman's favor. We were discussing risk management on the sidelines, and I think the story here is that the function of information security should, one way or the other, get to become part of operational risk management of the company, because at the enterprise level, cyber risk are not considered seriously, but operation risk are certainly considered. Positive technologies offered a new approach, a platform. Yeah, and Roman, perhaps the main speaker who was explaining how you can do a prediction forecast. I'm ready. So I just said I was giving a baton to you. Well, it's not going to happen. Actually, I'll come back to the discussion about these calls from the management. This information, what do we need to do? Look. In the first period, the first days and weeks, and later, what our company facing? A crisis, a cyber crisis. They had problems in their operation caused by cyber attacks. There's an exercise everybody knows, which, by the way, is practiced even poorer and less frequently than business continuity. So it's an escalation. Then security exercises, it's about business continuity. So what happens? There are important landmarks to convene the crisis committee, IT, information security, ER, and HR. So they need to understand what's working, what's not, what has suffered, people, customers, equipment, life. And they start making certain steps considering the situation where they are. So people who have heard it and are already panicking, they can be told, okay, you can strengthen the security, but you convene within the organization and work through your own internal communication. Should it happen tomorrow, like you're attacked tomorrow and you're out on a vacation? Well, it's not funny. It indeed was one of the practices, but then it was somehow sent to our customers and partners as a list of steps to make. Then there were technical components, IT, IS, forensics, perimeter. That were the actions to be made momentarily. And here, at the end of the day, we were taking this acute pain off the customer. You did the same, and we did the same, helping other organizations. But once the acuteness was going down, then another important question was coming up. And what next? And then, as Dmitry said, so can you cure me for the next 3 years? We have also seen things like that. But being a vendor, we did not quench this desire. We would say something like this: okay, you have now felt the brunt. You have now understood what's inadmissible in your company. You've really seen that people have started to do differently. Now it's become clear what's inadmissible. The site is down, the process is stalling, and things like that. The data is out there. And now we're saying, let's build correct protection after that.
I hope we'll have enough power for the process to come to an end.
Нет, да, ну смотри.
Well, look, Roman, you are talking about a situation when the customer faces a problem, but my question was different. Some customers haven't met any problems yet.
Элитарность,
And who was broken?
пример.
For example, a metal producer, the e-commerce companies, portals.
Но по самолету-то не
Well,
на энергию.
nothing bad happened. No
И это вот,
power company,
ну, как
the site was broken, but electricity is here. Root tube failed. What about root tube? What is root tube? It's nothing. Of course, you can disconnect the site, but you cannot disconnect an airplane.
перестают верить.
And people do not believe that attacks can be really dangerous. How can we
Не знаю, своему руководителю
tell your manager that
же потрогать нельзя.
invisible attacks are dangerous? You cannot touch them and feel them, you cannot see them, but they happen. I agree, it's very difficult to explain. You cannot touch it. That's why we have the hardware here. If there is a probability, then you have to do the retrospective analysis.
Про пентесты не хочется говорить,
Pen tests, I don't want to talk about them.
про неназванного, скажем, заказчика. Но так или иначе, инструмент
Anyway, that was a tool
вынесен на первое
that was shown to the top manager,
обслуживает тот,
and they said that SCADA, segmentation, physical, and everything else can be done at the stage when
совершенно невзрачных ребят.
we invited two persons, and for 3 days from the internet they went into the SCADA system, and they said that they can penetrate into the enterprise and stop the main business processes. Then it worked,
Ничего не нажать.
because the main thing was not to press anything and damage anything, but just to demonstrate that we can do it now.
Людей, которые отвечают за производство.
If you show that to the production people
Показать это руководителю, руководитель
and show it to the top manager, he said, well, this scenario should become unacceptable and impossible.
тесты проводят.
Pin tests are carried out to demonstrate to the top manager that we cannot be broken. But the real target is what kind of attacks
Где возможен
can be taken and what might the impact be.
все шашлыки.
For example, on Friday night, when everyone is out of the office,
Будут выбирать
then what may happen? And the hacker will choose the most unacceptable hour, the most inconvenient hour to attack.
четвертом, пятом,
At fourth or fifth pin test, you say that you are protected, your domain is not broken. It's all right, but that's about test 4, test 5. When you have test 1, then the result is quite bad, because everything is broken, everything is protected, nothing is properly controlled, and so on.
которые делают
And the people who do the pen test first disclose the important gaps and vulnerabilities and exploits. They see the gaps where there are no policies, there are no controls. Then they get to the people who have a lot of bridges and super administrator rights, access rights. Yes, but that is from our old life.
Для него будет очень естественно.
That's right.
Все очень круто.
This is all good, but why those people who attack us every day. Why didn't they do what you say before? Because of the low level of corporate culture. Even if an incident happens, the enterprise tries to conceal it and never admit it. And now all those people publish everything, but sometimes they are fakes. Anonymous said they broke here and there, but no one confirmed. There was no great impetus. I am going to continue about pin tests. I fully agree with you. The only thing is that the most efficient story is pin test in social media, because it's very easy to explain to a non-technical person when you have a story, a detective story without technical details. Why nothing bad happened yet? This is not a big problem because a lot of things have already happened. You can have a lot of examples in different industries. My opinion about what you asked for, so there is a lot of hype and so on and so forth. I think that people who monitor the real situation, the trends and the tendencies, they believe that the situation may deteriorate to such an extent that any cases, any tools can be used, including events that can lead to catastrophic consequences. If the situation deteriorates, we shall see such attacks, of course. I would put it differently. Talking through attacks no, let's put it differently. I think we have to display a more systematic approach. We have to talk about data security and allow the top manager to improve data security, taking into account real attacks that have happened. Supply chain attack, library attacks, phishing, perimeter breakthroughs. This is something that doesn't work. They said, well, so every day we have some kind of attack. There is no panic. We have such attacks, everything is all right. Top management needs a more systematic approach to data security. And then sales, how to work with the customer later. We have different customers, we have different buyers in the customer company. One thing is taking to CFO, the other is CHR, the other is sales. It's important to talk to, well, if you talk to CTO, then you have to talk about availability. If this is CEO, you have to show economic feasibility and efficiency of your security solution. Please don't frighten him. Don't try to scare him with phishing. He said, no, I don't believe you. No, don't scare anyone with phishing. I talked about how to begin negotiations. If there is no talk, you have to involve the person to stir up some kind of emotion, to make people want to talk to you. A few days ago, someone said that I'm talking in terms of large-scale cooperation, security, but the world is much wider. And now I see the same. Dmitry is talking about the processes, and he has the right to configure the process in the right way. You have resources, you have expertise, you know business tasks, business requirements. What about the companies who have no security people, who have no security at all? They have 50% of them is open source. It has nothing. In that case, the company comes to us for a service. He says that your open source looks like that. Yes. The proposal to CFO, CEO, CTO are different, and they can include not only attacks and their possible impact, but they are the people who are decision makers, and you can help him take decisions. 3 options, for example, or install this and it will cost you $1 million. If you do something lower, it may be 500,000, and we can do it at 10,000, but in that case you will have this and that, and you wouldn't have that. Yet at a certain event I heard reports about insurance of cyber risks, and this is a story that we cannot launch for the last few years. We have insurance company, and somebody has already insured something, and the program is clear, but it doesn't work properly. We have 4 options of risk management. Insurance is one of the 4, and perhaps we have to pay attention to it because it's more understandable to business departments, and it's more interesting than other options. I would look through this option in detail. Of course, we have to take into account force majeure, because some attacks can be regarded as force majeure where insurance doesn't work. Yes, it's a comment. DIMA operates within an optimal operating structure, but we had a vendor who tried to explain to our CEO what is SOC, why. They didn't mention reflection, contexts, red hunting, never, just SOC. It's typical, just because the top manager didn't have relevant experience. If you talk to the top manager in the language the top manager understands, the business language, these are the risks. You have to manage risks, and to manage risk you have such and such tools and levers. We often bring in historical, archaic solutions, physical security, data security. What is common there? The word security and nothing else. Scenarios, risks are quite different. And we have to be able to talk to CFO, CEO, CTO, and talk to them as an independent agency with its own budget, with its own face. I saw that we launched projects, expertise, processes. In that case, if you are not constrained by some other layers that you have to penetrate until you reach the target. I have a picture that I would like to show you in the end. If inside the company, if the company never dealt with security before, this is the good time to start. We have a good reason to do that. If the company dealt with security, then we have to explain what is new, what is happening now, what is happening in the Telegram channels of the attacking party. So there is no apocalypse, but in general nothing much happened. We protected, we do protect now. Yes, to explain why now we have the new situation, do we have to exploit fear?
разговор о том, что где-то что-то случается. Или все-таки
Or
психология
do we need a different psychological approach? We deal with the army not because you want to start a war, but you think about potential impact. Yes, the probability of risks is higher now. That is the point. Now, talking about risks and cyber stability, this story, like BCM, often was somewhere at the background, but it's time to deal with it now. Cyber security, cyber stability, and we have to do it in the right way from the very beginning, not just to buy a new server, but let's look at the stability of the company in different situations. Yes, we were talking about social stability. We have to explain to the top management what is really happening, why the situation is dangerous now, why some people are nervous, others are not. But at this point, I would like to thank all the panelists and all the listeners who are coming to an end. Thank you. Goodbye.